Bunnyman, and we are in the Eyes of Terror. And Crazy Susie is currently indisposed because she had her back surgery, and so she is laying down, and we should have her back next month. So this is a re-record of the first St. Paddy's Day special, I guess you could put it. It's an Irish holiday, so we felt like doing Irish movies, or I did. Yeah, so I had to redo this one because the last one was something weird happened. It got corrupted basically, and I wanted to already start putting out episodes. So the first episode I put out was actually supposed to be the second episode in the series, but it is what it is. So this is traditionally would be the first episode if things didn't happen the way they did. So if everything's a little out of whack, it's a little out of whack. I did an ad, so it will be here. Thank you for listening to this labor of love. We hope you're enjoying this episode and continue to do so. Crazy Susie and I try to bring you a quality podcast. If you wish to help us out, we have a few ways to do so. We have a Patreon with a variety of perks that range from $1 and that goes up to $20. We also have your Redbubble and a Teespring merch store with a slew of shirt designs that range from t-shirts to hoodies, blankets, and pillows. We also do a stream on YouTube and Twitch and a variety of other platforms. That's every other Sunday a month at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please follow us on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to keep up to date on what is going on with the streams, new merch releases, and just to see our daily lives. And finally, you can passively support us by listen to us on Radio Public, a free podcast catcher that pays the creators. We also appreciate all the likes, comments, and subscriptions you have given us. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of this episode. Thank you for coming back. And so we'll get into what am I drinking. I am drinking Bell's Winter White Ale. It's a Belgium-inspired wheat ale. It's brewed and bottled by Bell's Brewery out of Comstock, Michigan. It's Bell's Winter White Ale is a bright alternative to dark and heavy winter seasonal beers. This stylish and refreshing wheat ale is fermented with Belgian yeast, wielding a mix of clove and fruity aromas without the use of any spices, an ideal beer for embracing winter. The shelf life is 6 months, and the alcohol is 5% by volume. It says do not litter, things like that. I like Bell's when I can find it. I think it's one of the better breweries, and I have never had a beer that's been of theirs that has been disappointing. They seem to have a very good handle on what they produce. And this month has been really weird down here. It has been hot and then cold, and today it was like in the low 60s, upper 50s, but it was still cold for us down here. And as the day progressed, it got colder. So, it's nice to have these last vestiges of winter beers, because we're at that point where my favorite beers, which are the heavier beers, are having to go away, unfortunately, for me. And I'm going to be going to the lighter ones. So I'll be doing a lot more lighter type beer reviews. Not as much IPAs, because I'm not a big fan of IPAs. They're just too hoppy for me. And too many, in my opinion, too many breweries they don't ferment it long enough, and they just, because it's hoppy, they call it IPA. So, but let's get into the first swig. It is a very light seasonal brew for winter brews. You can taste a lot of the different notes. You can definitely taste the clove, and there's it basically, when I buy this, I buy it around the holidays, and it reminds me of the holidays. It's a perfect stay at home when there's snow on the ground, or perfect Yule beer, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't have to be Yule, but I always think of winter as Yule for me. Especially if you have like the smell of pine around you. This definitely feels like a cabin beer, like one that you'd be sitting with in a forest somewhere, a fire going, and it's almost the perfect. That's the perfect setup for this type of beer. Like this lovely beer I have, we will be getting into the movie. So, our movie is The Last Light, an Irish ghost story. It is found on Amazon Prime. The IMDb is a 3.5 out of 10. The year that it was made is 2013. It is 1 hour and 25 minutes. It is directed by George Clarke. It is starring Rob Rinder, Joe Lamont Crawford, Vivian Jamieson, Leo Clarke, Tobin Clarke, Roddy Conlon, Jenny McCormick, Peter Meehan, John Rinder, and Lee Robinson. And that is basically everybody. This is a very sparse casted film. It's supposed to be more atmospherical than anything else. The synopsis of it is: sealing up an abandoned old people's home that is being destroyed by teenagers is the final job for a maintenance man before his dream holiday. But is it the kids or something else that is preventing the job from being completed? Let's get into the movie, shall we? Again, this is Last Light, an Irish ghost story. Alright. The movie starts out on some scenery shots of the Irish countryside and a black, how do I best describe it? It's like a black car / a van. They're very common in Britain for like maintenance and stuff like that. They're just very compact cars over there in general. But this is basically a compact, windowless van. But we're about the length of a small car. I don't know how to describe them. They sort of look sort of funny, I'll be honest. And we see a man. Okay, so we see this man driving this car and the scenery and all that stuff. He gets to his house, and we see him. He's rummaging through drawers, and he's looking for stuff. And his wife is asking, "What are you looking for?" And then we find out he's looking for some batteries because his camera / torch eats the batteries. So he wants to make sure he has enough batteries for this job he's going to do. And at that time, then she sort of goes, "Well, you should have just stopped into town, got yourself some." He didn't want to stop into town because it was like an extra drive he didn't want to make. Because they basically live out in the middle of nowhere. She gives him a Zippo with a cross on it. And she kisses him and says, "Don't take too long. We got a plane to catch." And he's like, "I need to finish this. I want to finish this up before, we go on our vacation so I don't have to think about it." Which is respectable. I thought it was weird that he did bring up this video recording torch. And I guess he's sort of a jokester, and he hasn't been using his torch the way it's supposed to be, and that's why she bought it for him, was to record what was going on as he was doing maintenance, I guess. And I just never heard of such a thing, and I can imagine it would eat batteries like nothing, because it's running. I'm surprised it doesn't have its own power, 12 volt power pack to it, instead of these or whatever. He gets back into his car, and we see him drive some more as he goes out to his job. And just by the way he looks, I guess, he's some kind of handyman. And then we have an intro song / it has lyrics. It just sounds like generic rock, easy rock. It's okay, but overall the music of this is overbearing. it started to, I would have knocked it down a little bit. Acted like it was coming from the car compared to you overlay the sound over the movie. And then the man drives up to the man, his name is Rob, drives up to his job site, which is an old abandoned estate, and it's fenced off. It is a chain link fence with barbed wire on top, and it has a bunch of signs out front of it and padlocks and stuff like that. So he undoes some of the padlocks. He opens the gate, gets back in his car, drives, blah blah blah. Re-padlocks, you know how you normally do that type of stuff. And then he drives up through the abandoned, I guess, driveway is the best way to put it, and it has like a little roundabout, and he just parks there, sort of like out of the way. He gets out. We watch him put on his tool belt, and I was sort of like, as I was watching this guy sort of reminded me of an old roommate that I had, because he wears a beanie, and he just is like stocky. He's of a larger build, and he's sort of short. He just reminds me of an old roommate that looked almost exactly like him. Did the same thing. He always wore a beanie and everything. I just thought that was funny. So we watch the guy get ready as he puts on his tool belt. He lights a cig, and so far this is so interesting. I mean, we sit there basically for him to literally struggle with the tool belt and the majority of lighting the cigarette. And then he walks the moody, this sort of darkened path around the building. I don't know why he's going around the building compared to, like, let's say the front door of the building. But he walks around as some sad music plays. So far, this movie is super exciting, especially when he grabs his, and then we get shots of the building and the stairwell and stuff like that. And then there's this part where I was sort of like, why did you do that? So so halfway around, he comes across his door, and he takes his hammer out, and he rips the door off without the assistance of the hammer, and throws it on the ground really violently. Like, that door did something wrong. So I don't know what that door's problem was. Maybe it cussed him out. I don't know. Maybe it gave him a dirty doorknob look. I don't know what's going on there. But with prejudice, he took care of that door. After a while, he finally opens another door to go inside to look around the estate. Then he gets another cig, and oddly enough, he misplaces his newly gifted lighter. So as a backup, he grabs some matches and lights his cigarette with a match. And then he hears some noise and heroically goes and investigates the sound. What it sounds like to be children, or young teenagers, I guess. And he curses underneath his breath, bloody teenagers, because I guess, like this one also said, that teenagers have been going there and doing things that teenagers do sometimes in abandoned places. I've never done anything in an abandoned place like that. I just didn't have those type of friends, I guess, or live in an area with a lot of abandoned places. Because, well, there's that, and I lived in an area that anybody suspicious would get the cops called on them pretty quickly. So we had some issues. We had a lot of issues where I grew up. Now we get to see what's inside of the building, what it looks like. Overall, the house is falling apart. Some of the floors are gone or caved in. The wallpaper's coming off. The plaster, it's that old plaster, so it's, when it gets wet, it just clumps off and falls off. But I mean, structurally, it looks okay. It doesn't look like, I'm pretty sure, like I said, some of the floors are caving in, but other than that, I mean, it could have been saved. It's just probably some money. But parts of it, it doesn't look like there's any damage at all. And then he starts searching through the house. As he's searching, and he will flash his flashlight in one direction and look in another direction, or he'll flash his light in one direction and then he'll look in another direction and we'll see a shadow across the wall. And of course he doesn't see it, but we do. We get a lot of cheap jump scares in this movie. And then he starts, and he just sort of ignore. I mean, obviously he doesn't ignore the. He sort of shakes off like that. I think he's starting to get a feeling that it's not everything is kosher, so he just sort of shakes off that feeling, and he'll go into another room. And then one of my favorite parts of this whole sort of like searching thing is that he went into a room and there was a blank wall, and he shined the light on the wall and he started doing shadow puppets. You know, you get your classic duck and your dog and stuff like that. And I thought that was pretty funny because that's something I would do. And then we'll hear, and then the maker of the movie decided to overlay some more music. So we start hearing piano music. Again, it would have been creepier if the piano music was like if somebody was playing a piano and the guy heard it, but no, this is just overlay. The piano music started to play, and again, it's just too loud. It didn't really set any mood or anything like that. It actually started getting pretty annoying. And then, because I would rather have heard that, you know, you hear dripping water, and obviously him shuffling through, and just having the general ambiance of this decrepit building that he's alone in. I think that would have been far more creepy instead of mood than overlaying stuff with music to either mask the noise or try to add something that it failed to add. You know, it's always sad, and as he's investigating, you just think how sad it is to see what once was a good-looking place go into despair. And this movie, like, it takes like 20-30 minutes, or at least 20 minutes, of him exploring. It starts feeling more like an Ubex video than it does an actual like movie. Honestly, I'd rather have this movie been an Ubex movie with what is about to happening. I think that would have been a better idea than what the direction this movie went in. And as he passes this area, you hear this water dripping, and it's a lot of water that sounds like it's filling this building, like a pipe is busted, compared to just water that's on the ceiling or some, it's just constant dripping. We start seeing and hearing, we start seeing things and start hearing voices, shadows, but like I said, our main character is oblivious. As he stands in a room after looking at a few nooks and crannies, trying to investigate the voices, a pair of hands grab him from behind and drag him into a door. And the way that this was shot, I wasn't sure if the door was on the floor or it was on like it was on the ceiling or on a wall. It just, the way it was shot, the orientation was really weird. And then he's dragged into this door, and then we see a pair of children's feet run across the torch, the torch / camera, and we see Rob drag himself back into the room where he sits down and watches a small girl run up the stairs. Then he gets attacked by, as he's watching this, and he's just sort of like, whatever, I guess shook up, I guess, this older girl runs into the room flailing like a flailing arm man and attacks him. And his torch camera catches it all. The attack goes on for a while. This attack is just really unconvincing and awkward to watch. But like all good beings, after being attacked by a phantom girl, he gingerly gets up and slowly starts walking as more activities such as running shadows go before him, and he starts exploring the building. Then he comes across a big hole in the wall. As he starts looking in the hole, a girl pops out and scares him. And all he has to say is bloody kids. Okay? After being attacked, after watching a creepy girl go up some stairs, and they all are dressed in early clothing, not modern, I guess is the best way to put it, he still blames it on rambunctious village teenagers. As all this is happening, he gets up, starts having a coughing fit, basically, and then he rests against a stairwell where a hand combs through his luscious locks. Then a young boy comes out of nowhere and wraps himself around his legs and asks him not to be locked up. Then the torch camera does that. It basically goes to snow, or that wavy interference that old TVs used to do. You know, it's supposed to be like, ooh, this is spooky. They're interfering with the video waves or the radio waves because they're supernatural. And then as the camera's pointing down to the kid, his face changes to something sinister, and you know he's now a ghost. I know this is trying to be scary and all, but it's not really working. We've all seen it before. And the young boy ghost thing starts to basically herd our heroic main character upstairs, where they play a game of run the other direction of where I am. So the ghost boy will be, standing in a doorway, and Rob will be going towards that doorway, but see him, and then he'll go the other direction. And they will keep playing this game. He tries to get close, and the ghost boy transforms again and jumps at him. And then Rod runs around the dangerous upstairs, and then he runs into the closest exit, and he trips a little bit, which he drops the camera torch. And this exit is just a really large window, and it exits out to the top of out to the roof, out to the second floor roof, where Rob sort of like tries to calm himself down. He takes off his tool belt. He tries to also pump himself up. I don't understand why he took his tool belt off, to be honest, but he did. And then he searches his pockets, and he finds his lighter, and he lights up another cig, and then he's like, I'm going to do this. And no one's going to scare me. I'm going to pump myself up. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to board this place up, and I'm going to get out of here. Then he gets the courage back up, and he storms in there like he owns the place. And he picks up his torch, but leaves his tool belt. Why? I don't know. And then he goes to a room where he finds his hammer and a plastic container of nails, which again, I don't know how the hammer came off the tool belt with the nails. I'm not understanding the lack of tool belt here. And he starts boarding up the place. As he's doing this, he hears footsteps, and there's a hallway like just filled with water. And so he starts hearing the footsteps and the water. So he pokes his head out, which is always brilliant, and says an expletive. As he is looking around, he sees a man dragging a woman behind him. He looks like a butcher, basically. He picks the chick up, punches her a few times, and then the man sort of like just throws her on the ground, looks at Rob and tells him to get out. So Rob runs off in the opposite direction and hides into another room. Back home, the wife is beautifying herself because we find out she is Rob and her are going off onto their honeymoon, and so she is painting her toes and her fingers like women do. And then the house phone inconveniently rings, and she is startled by it, and the voice on the other end goes, I'm here, come out, meet me. So she gets up and waddles over, waddling because, you know, she has still wet paint on her toes, and she has the cotton wool still in between her feet. She opens the door of the flat, and we see that there's just luggage, and of course the friend is outside the door, and she spooks Joe, the Rob's wife, and she curses at her and invites her in, and then they both have a nice cup of tea, and she shows Joe shows off the nightie and some of the other stuff that she's, I guess, taking with her on this honeymoon of theirs. And I'll be honest here, this nightie was a leopard print nightie, and I'm not a huge fan of leopard print, and I don't know many men who are. If you are, that's fine, but it just doesn't look right to me. It's just, to me, that's a huge turnoff, is leopard print. As that's going on, Rob is finishing up. So Joe tells Viv, I don't know if she refers to her as sister at one point, but I don't know if they're friends or they've known each other for so long that they're basically sisters. I'm not quite sure. But Viv asks where Rob was. She said that he's finishing up a job at the old Dixon place, where Viv has a flashback or a premonition of the butcher guy's face. We see the butcher guy's face is sort of like a little chopped up and stuff, like it's scarred and it has gaping wounds and stuff on it. And she drops her a cup of tea, but doesn't offer to clean it up. It's just, drop a cup of tea and just let it just sit there because you had a premonition. So I guess this Dixon house is bad news. And Viv tells Joe that it's renowned. The Dixon house is renowned for paranormal activity, but not the nice cuddly activity, but the paranormal activity that is the violent type that you won't leave alive. Which Joe cracked up, but Viv tells her it's not a laughing matter. Then she tells Joe that her friend twice removed that lived down the block from her Grand's, who used to stand on her head and sing about ducks, was part of a paranormal group or a paranormal society. You could spice it up as much as you want. A paranormal society that stayed the night there, and all the men were attacked, and that Joe needed to call Rob right away, and of course she does, but it goes directly to voicemail, or you can tell it has no signal. So they decide to get this right idea we're going to go up to the old Dixon house, whatever. We cut back to Rob, and he's exploring a little bit more of the house, more like scared than not, I guess. Well, I would be too after seeing that type of thing. But I would be getting out at that point. Next, we see a silver car driving down the same road that Rob drove down, and Viv and Joe going to the Dixon house. They have a heated discussion about how she gets hit with a feeling, while Joe is only worried about their holiday. Viv tells Joe that the ghosts don't want it to be sealed up, and ghosts are known for attacking people that seal them away. Joe sort of dismisses this idea because Rob had no issues up till now with the house. So I can understand why she's being dismissive if this is your thesis of you think they would start doing stuff, here and there, just trying to scare it up, not, scare Rob off right before he's, like little things, like playing around with the tools. If you brought something to drink, it's not in the same place. Hearing laughter, the shadow stuff. Viv reveals that she has a spirit guide, and he shows her she shows her premonitions and stuff like that. So she pulls over, puts the car in park, and shows Joe that she can prove it by a sign. So basically, Viv pulls over, puts the handbrake on, and they sit there, and Viv tells the spirit guide to show them that he's real, and so I guess the spirit guide pushes the car a little bit down the road with the handbrake on. So here's two things that could go on. Yes, there's a spirit guide. Or two, your handbrake's faulty. Either way, I'll be making sure that you get that car checked out at some point. Can't blame it all on the supernatural. Just saying. And so now, again, so then we cut back to Rob, who's continuing to explore, and hears her girl laughing. And she asks him to help her. His torch starts acting up, and we see some arms wrap around him again and pull him into another room. Then the camera torch gets all wave-like again. We hear screams, then nothing. Then a girl laughs. Then we hear a body being dragged. I don't know what's going on there. I mean, the screen cuts to black, basically. But I do have a question of, why do people say hello to possible intruders? Do they expect an answer? Well, hello, I'm sorry about this. I can explain. It's not what it looks like. I was looking at the apartments in this area. I just wanted to make sure what they look like at night. It doesn't make any sense. And then we cut back to Joe and Viv. They drive up to the Dixon house. They go to the gate to only find out it's locked. And they're both hoping that Rob is gone. And Joe is like, oh, I don't see his car. Viv walks 3 steps left and looks up, and of course Rob's car is still there. And then they're both contemplating how to get inside, because like I said, there's barbed wire and stuff on top of the chain link fence. Viv sees that there's another road that proceeds around the back of the building, so they're hoping that maybe the chain link fence, either there's a hole in it or it stops. So they take the road, I guess, behind. I don't know. We cut back to Rob, who wakes up, and he uses his Zippo as the light. He wakes up and he sees a blonde-haired girl that asks him for help, and he is startled, but he just sort of shakes off and gets up. Next, we see Viv and Joe. We see Viv, somehow they got over the fence, and Viv is deciding to wear her special high-heeled boots out on this expedition to an abandoned haunted place. And then Joe is wearing her wellies with little flowers on them. So they definitely came to the right place. And then they go in to the building to try to find Rob. Joe doesn't want to go in, but Viv goes, let's do this. And then she just starts singing a song as she walks towards the building. Next, we see Rob crawling his way through the house. Rob comes to a room that is supposed to be creepy, and he comes across a man in a blanket. They freak each other out, and the blanket guy tells Rob they lock him in and come to him every night. And then next we see Joe is banging on the metal door, demanding to be let in. But Viv isn't happy about this because basically she's announcing them to the rest of the spirits. Mind you, this is a dilapidated building, so I'm pretty sure there's more than one entrance. The blanket boy, whose name is Michael, tells Rob that the ghost dragged him into the attic, the attic between the walls, and every night an old woman sits in the corner of the attic waiting. And then he says that a girl is dragged up to the room by her dad, and the old woman abuses her, and Michael has been helplessly left in the room and has to watch the abuse. And he can't help her and doesn't know how long he has been in that room. Then the door opens, which Rob charges out, as Michael really doesn't move, to be honest. He just sort of seemed like he gave up. As Rob gets out, the door slams behind him, and obviously Michael's left in there, and we see a girl begging before she is slapped across the face by an elderly woman. Rob wanders around the house trying to get to Michael. As Rob is wandering around, he comes across an old newspaper. There's pictures and stuff on it, but it's hard to make out what it was saying because it's all like crinkled up and everything. But all you could really make out on it is it says, "You die." That was printed in red. Which, if you know anything about printing presses, especially, up to like recent, and even recently, they don't do a lot of colored print. Colored print was very rare until like digital printing was a thing. So this newspaper would not have printed something like "You die now" or whatever in red on a newspaper. And then Rob sees a hole in the wall, and of course he has to climb into it. As Rob is climbing in, Viv and Joe enter the building, and Joe is super loud and super annoying. And then Rob continues to get his quest to get Michael by going across some sketchy floors, which a lot of them have no... they're just the beams. They're not the actual floors anymore. After a while, he hears a voice telling him over here, and he thinks it's Michael. And this entire time that Michael's doing this, he's using his Zippo, which I don't know if you've ever held a Zippo in your hands for a long period of time, but they do get hot after a while. As Rob is looking around, and I think he's crawling on his hands and knees through this like low area, Rob's lighter gets hot, and of course he drops it, and he has to drop it in a place where there's a hole, and it disappears. So Rob, without any light, abandons his quest to get Michael, and he gets out of the hole, and then as he's resting his hand against as Rob is resting his hand on the brick to catch his breath, a hand tries to touch his, basically like hold his hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. As Rob is walking around, he keeps hearing over here and leave, and he runs into a tall, creepy shadow guy, where he finally finds Michael in the hands of the shadow guy. And basically the shadow guy snaps Michael's neck and drops him to the ground. And then Rob runs the other direction and then he starts bumming his way around upstairs. Joe and Viv are downstairs. And Rob accidentally hits a busted door and a pile of rubble. And all of that on the other side of this busted door and rubble is a caved-in floor. So he just knocks it enough because he was running that he knocked it, and the rubble falls down the collapsed floor onto Joe and Viv. But honestly, if you look at the rubble, it really isn't that much. So I don't think it would kill anybody. It would just maybe hurt you a little bit. But we see Viv's hand stop moving. And then we also see that Rob is on his second to last match. As Rob was looking around, he had his back to an open door, which, if you ever are in a situation, I generally don't like to have my back to any opening, to be honest. I would rather have it against a wall. But if you're ever in a situation where you are in danger, don't have your back to a hole or a doorway or a window. Why I say that because Rob gets jumped by his ghost stalker girlfriend, and she goes away, and Rob finds his long lost lighter just chilling. And then Rob gets up and runs to the stairs because he's had enough, and he sort of falls down the stairs, and then he composes himself, runs across the rubble where Viv and Joe are, is oblivious to that. We see Viv's hand sort of pop up as he steps on like a plank of wood that was resting on her wrist or whatever. Then he goes to the middle door and realizes it's locked, and he lights his last match and is greeted by the ghost posse. Then we have darkness and a girl screaming, and we can assume they all died. And why did they not get out of any other opening? I would have just left. I mean, obviously the job is not completed at all. So I get this movie a 1.5 out of 5. Where do I even start with this movie, to be honest? This movie should have just been more of a Ubex exploration feel to it, with no music or anything like that, or if anything, just very minimal. I'd rather just hear the scraping of his feet, just general ambiance of the place compared to this loud overlay. I said I'd rather have a Ubex exploration with some ghosts mixed in with it. The ghosts look like haunted house characters. You can tell they're in makeup. There's some digital effects that try to make them look a little bit creepier. It really doesn't come across well and looks fake. It doesn't really add anything. And what I find, especially when it comes to horror movies that are taking place in abandoned places that have supposedly a history, I like to know a little bit about the place. So we get no history of the Dixon house, why it's so bad. And I mean, we get the general of it's bad, it's scary, boo. And it just doesn't work for me. Viv, Joe, and Michael bring nothing to the film other than that the ghosts can do things to people. We get some explanation to what's causing the activity, but I just feel like it's not that great. I mean, it would have been fine if it was like, as he was sealing it up, little things starting to happen. But it just doesn't make any sense that they waited to the last second. I felt no connection to any of the characters, either be the main characters or the spirits. And then, I don't know, the way that this movie was shot, I don't know if it was supposed to be found footage because of the whole camera torch thing, or if it was supposed to be shot like a traditional movie. I don't get it, because it's like a combination of both, and neither one of them work. So I would rather of them just get rid of the gimmick of the camera torch, because it really didn't play anything in the movie. I mean, it would have been different if when he was dragged, he took it with him and it was flashing around, but when we see glimpses of what was going on, we weren't that lucky. Again, the music was overbearing. It could have been, and I don't think it was very creepy at all. And it, the atmosphere by far would have been a lot creepier. And another thing is, I don't know if they used like a water, like if they used fake water drips, because if you listen to it, it doesn't sound like water dripping in a spacious area. It sounds like water dripping in front of a mic. Overall, this is a lame movie. It was unconvincing. Didn't create any scares for me. I wasn't interested in the movie. I was more interested in the building than anything else. Like I said, I'd rather have a Ubex with some ghosts in it. And I guess that's what it was, but I mean, what I'm saying is, I don't understand the whole point of him getting dragged into different parts, and we don't know what's going on. Okay, so this was actually shot in the UK. The filming location is the it's Irish, so forgive me. Cairnadahu House in Larne, County Antrim, Northern Ireland, UK. Cairnadahu House, Larne, County Antrim, North Ireland, UK. Okay. The trivia. Okay. Director George Clarke spent 3 different nights in the old mansion with a paranormal team and psychic leading up to the shoot. Everything that happened in the film but one ghost was based on those experiences, sightings, and sounds during the visit. And I think they should have just left it at that. If they would have just translated that without the music, without a lot of the other little weird things, I would have been okay with it, I think. George had written the scene with his daughter, the little girl, appearing in the roof space before he went to the mansion with the paranormal team. Once there, the psychic he met for the first time noticed George standing in a spot by the roof space and the room George had based the scene, and announced that a little girl was trapped in there. George had never spoke of this scene to anyone before this. No less than 2 shadows, male over 6 feet tall, were spotted by George Clarke and his crew during the filming. One time, watching them set up, and the second was exiting the kitchen area. As director George turned to see why Joe L. Crawford was pushing him, he saw the shadow leaning over her from behind. Writer-director George Clarke originally wanted to push a movie based on a new kind of marketing, without a title as such, but a sound. He began the project with the name sound Shh. Director George Clarke knew they didn't have much to work with, but still wanted to create as much of a Hammer horror look with the lighting and cinematography. I hate to be this way, they sort of failed. A scene involving a burning man running toward Robbie was originally written in. After the paranormal team and the psychic could smell burning from one of the rooms that used to be an old Burns unit when the house was used as a hospital in the World War. I'm assuming World War II. I'd rather have just him said, "What is that burning sound?" or try to follow a burning smell. The script for The Last Light was written over 3 days, with the filming done in 12, all for a budget of 200 quid. Yeah. I mean, like I said, he didn't. I think he got to save some money without the music and stuff. I think it would have just been far better without the bloody music. The lighting for the film was created by the Zippo Matches iPad light and a small mag light covered with a sandwich bag. And I liked the lighting, to be honest. I thought it was creepy and it worked. The scene where the rubble and debris comes crashing down from above was done by assistant director Roddy Conlon, tying himself to a broken door frame and hanging off the last of the upper floors that had caved in. From there, he could kick off the mess. The apartment scene with the girls, Vivian Jamieson and Joe L. Crawford, took the longest to film due to the amount of laughter, fluffing of lines, and overall great time had by all. Their scene filmed most of the blooper reel. Again, I'd rather them instead of making up the Dixon House or whatever, I'd rather them actually call it by what it was called. And it sounds like it was a hospital at one point. You get none of that. I mean, I'm more interested in what was being said that would happen than the actual movie. I don't know. I was hoping for something good, but this just wasn't it. And even if you look at the jacket for it, it's overdone. It has a creepy picture, but then somebody digitally put an outline of a skull, and the lights. It's like they had to go. They couldn't let little nuanced stuff happen. It had to be in your face. And that's why this movie failed. I don't know what else I can say about it. And so, with that being said, and that wraps up this episode of this podcast. We'll hope you have a good rest of the day, and we'll scare you later. Bye.